Hello there. For those of you who have been keeping track of my channel for the past year, you might remember, and if you haven't been keeping track with the past year, like less than that, maybe you have seen this video or not. I made it like 11 months ago. Um, anyway, if you'll remember, I did a video on languages and their usefulness. This is basically an update video on that video. Just to go over it again and add some more information as far as what I meant. So anyway, in that video, I took basically my chalkboard and I wrote down several languages that I would put down as useful, not useful, stuff like that. Like I said before, within that video, and I might make a link to it down below. I don't know yet. I might do that. So if there is a link down below, click on it. I haven't decided yet to put it in yet. But anyway, in that video, I made a list of languages that I know and put them as far as my opinion of, well, is it useful to me? Is it not useful to me? When talking about languages and their usefulness and not usefulness, it all depends on the individual. Like, for instance, if, take Chinese, for example, Mandarin. Mandarin I have no use for, so, I wouldn't learn it. But if someone were in, like, say, New York, in the China section of New York or something, or had, Chinese friends, then that would be useful. I'm not going to tell that person, well, since it's not useful for me, it's definitely not useful for you, and you're wasting your time. That would not be right, because even though there's no Chinese in my area, there's Chinese in his area or her area, Basically, it all depends on your area of language, of, like, nationalities, basically. Like, for instance, me, for example, on top of there being Latin American Spanish being heard a lot in my community, and there are also other languages that you hear too as well. Like, for instance, I mentioned before, I said Albanian. I already told you about that. And another one, believe it or not, that I hear a lot, even though they do speak fluent English, it's good to hear them speak and stuff like that. Another language I hear a lot, believe it or not, is Greek, believe it or not. Believe it or not, in my area, I don't know if it is like this in your area, but there are tons and tons of Greeks. Believe it or not, I know in a former video I said that Albanian is spoken, but believe it or not, this is more spoken than Albanian in my area. Next to Spanish, it's like the most widely spoken foreign language you'll hear after Spanish. There are tons and tons of Greeks in, like, eastern Pennsylvania / western New Jersey. I can name and point out tons of people I know who speak fluent Greek and who are Greeks themselves. So, like I said before, with languages and their usefulness, it depends on the area that you live in. Like, for instance, even though learning Greek, like modern Greek, would be useful to me in my area, that doesn't mean that in another person's area it will be useful for them to learn Greek. Like, you can learn the language if you want to, even if there's no one that's speaking it. Like, for instance, I picked up Turkish right here. Even though there's no Turks in my area, I just decided to learn it anyway because, it looked interesting to me. You don't have to have... Well, let me rephrase that. It helps if there are people who actually speak the foreign language you're learning in your community when you're learning it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. Like, for instance, say you're learning a not-so-common language, and there's no one who speaks it in your area. Well, there are other ways to get around that. Like, for instance, the YouTube polyglot community, for example. There are polyglots that are from all over the world. Like, say you're learning, let's see, what's, well, anyway, I can't think of one, but say you're learning a language that's not common, and by a not common language, I mean, like, not common as in not Greek, not Italian, not Spanish, not French, those languages. Say you're learning like a totally uncommon, rare language. That's where I would say, like, the internet really comes in handy as far as, like, YouTube, Facebook, all that other stuff. You could probably meet people who speak your language, or if you make, practice videos of your target language on YouTube, maybe there are polyglots whose first language is your target language, and they could probably help you out, stuff like that. So it all depends. Like I said before, with languages and their usefulness, every language to me has a use. It's just how you go about using it, determining your usefulness. Like, for instance, with me, I do not find any language useless. There is no language that is useless. The only language that I might find useless are those dead languages, or languages that were ancient but then now are modern. Like, for instance, Greek, for example. I would say that modern Greek is useful, but learning, like, ancient Greek, it's good if you're like a historian or if you like classic stuff, but to me there would be no usefulness out of learning ancient Greek versus modern Greek. Like, for instance, I would rather learn modern. There are some who, like, no, I like to learn ancient. Well, that's fine with them. So, like I said before, it all depends on the individual and how useful he or she can make the language. Like I mentioned before with the, Greek and Chinese and Albanian, like, for instance, someone like me who doesn't have any Chinese in their area, it would be pointless for me to learn Chinese as far as communication wise goes. I could still learn it, but as far as communication, I'm at a short end here because, no Chinese. But someone in, say, New York or, someone elsewhere would, know tons of Chinese people or have an area with tons of Chinese people, then they'd be like, hey, it's not useful to you, but it's useful to me, and I like to learn it. The same thing with me with Albanian and Greek. Even though you might not have Albanians and Greeks in your community, wherever you live, I have tons of them, especially Greek, believe it or not, and it's useful to me because, I hear the language. One of my parents and I have been friends with a Greek family since we moved here in, like, the late 90s, and we go see them, like, every week. And believe it or not, I hear Greek being spoken every week. I hear it all the time. So it's not a rare thing for me to not hear Greek. And plus, in other areas that I go, there's tons that I hear. Believe it or not, I hear it more than Spanish. So it all depends on your area, your usefulness, and that's it.